My chair over. G'day, Stu from UAVfutures here, and today we're going to be looking at this. No, we're not going to actually be looking at the whole quadcopter. What I want to look at is this bright orange part right here. Now, we're going to be looking at Runcam's new FPV camera, the Eagle. So I've got my hands on the 16:9 version and also the 4:3 version, so we're having a bit of a compare between those two. And I've also got some very interesting things to say about it, because I know a lot of people have been loving it lately, but I've actually got some things that I think you might be interested to know before you get one of these. Anyway, let's stick it on the bench and see just how the camera comes when you first get it. We'll have a look at some of its features, and then most importantly, I want to show you guys some DVR footage. Anyway, let's get started. Alrighty, now as always, they're going to come in one of these sort of sturdy boxes. So you can see here, I've got the Eagle, and this one that we're going to be looking at right now is the 16:9 version. And I've got one right here, and it comes with some awesome little attachments right here. I also have in here, I'm not going to be taking this one out though, because some of the features are very, very similar. But in here, this is the 4:3 version. So I have been testing both of these out for a little bit. So first things first, let's have a bit of an overview, or I guess a bit of a look at the things that come. So you're going to get the camera itself, and I do like how it's bright orange. And the biggest difference I noticed between this and the HS117 in terms of looks-wise, look at the size of this lens. That is massive. So you are going to have a massive lens on the end, and if you have a really compact build or something you need, that might be something that you do need to take into account. Is this going to fit into your build? Now on the outside, here's our first little bit of a change. You'll notice you have two holes, and that goes to do with one of the special mounting brackets. So we'll have a look that comes with it as well. And then on the back, we actually have a fair bit of stuff, so we can take 5 to 17 volts. So that's like a 2 to 4S LiPo. You've got your ground and your video on this little plug right here, and on this side, this is all about setting up, I guess, changing it, plugging in the little OSD and working through that. Now let's have a look at what comes with the camera, and this is exactly the same regarding whether you get the 4:3 or the 16:9. You get a whole bunch of little extras, so we've got them right here. So you do get something to change your OSD settings, so that's what we'll put that to the side. We'll talk about these cables as well. You get some more stuff. This one's actually pretty handy if you want to power your little camera and do some adjustments without rigging it up to an FPV system or anything like that. You can actually use these little connectors here to do that, so that's a nice little touch. And then we probably get to my favorite part, the thing, and this is common among all Runcam cameras. I love how we actually get some of this silicone wire. Now I know everyone talks about this stuff because it is so much nicer to work with this stuff. So that's probably one of my favorite things about Runcam FPV cameras, is just how awesome their little wires are to work with. Alrighty, now in terms of the little extras you might actually use when using your camera, so you're going to get a nice little Allen key, which is fairly handy, but then you're going to get some little screws and washers and plastic sort of little braces and those sorts of things. Then, here's probably the first difference that you're going to notice. You're going to get one of these little Runcam protractors, and well, it's got your angles marked on here, so you can actually see what angle you want your FPV camera at, and that's why that's sort of our first point of difference. That is why, if we put this in here, this can be mounted either forwards or backwards. But that is why whether you want to mount it from the top or from the bottom, you put this in here, and that's why it's got two little screw holes. So you screw one end in just here, and then your second one you tighten down at whatever angle that you want. So that's fairly handy. But something I did actually miss, I know on the back of the Runcam Swifts and some of those ones, they actually have a little different brace where it comes out and has the second little piece just here. It'd be nice if that was actually included in the back plate just here as well, because I know some of my builds I've built around using that back little brace, and now that I've got to actually switch over to one of these ones, I find that a little bit just a little bit of an oversight. It'd be really nice if they did include that little extra, because you are paying a bit of a premium for this brand of camera, and they do have awesome stuff. But yeah, it'd be nice if they just had that little extra, if they kept some of the same sort of backplate design if you wanted to use that. Alrighty, so all those little boring parts aside, now we've gone through that, let's talk about how does this actually go as an FPV camera. So how do I find this, and would I replace my current cameras with them? So the first thing that people need to realize when they're getting one of these is this is a CMOS camera. And that sounds insane for me going back to CMOS, because usually CMOS have terrible wide dynamic range. So if something is bright in the sky, they're going to wash out the rest of it, or it can be the reverse. It can't really focus on more than one thing at once in terms of if something is really bright or really dark. So it seems crazy that they're going back to a CMOS camera, but it's meant to have some special technology in here to make it not too bad. And the other thing that everything so far that I've been flying has been CCD. So all the HS 1177s and all that jazz is that's what's rocking the CCD. And the second thing that's actually quite interesting about this camera, this is one of the first, I guess, look, I know they have been out there, but this is the first one that I've used that is using it in the 16:9. It doesn't actually say it on the back, it only says it on the box, so make sure you don't get them mixed up. But this one is running in the 16:9 sort of format, and this one's running in the 4:3. Now what I'm going to do, because this is the important part, I'm going to jump in and start talking about some DVR, because that's what it's all about. Does this make my flight experience any better? Is paying more for these cameras worth it? Because I know there's been a lot of buzz around them and a lot of people have been loving them. So the first thing I want to do is play some DVR, and then we're going to talk about it. Now the DVR you're about to watch, I think that's recording on the 4:3 camera, so we'll be able to talk about, I guess, the colors and the contrasts and the wide dynamic range and some of the features that would be common to both of these. And then I'm actually going to show you a side-by-side. I think we're going to have a look at some of the 16:9 vision and what that would look like in terms of some wider goggles, because I tried this out on my Dom V3s, and we'll also try it out and we'll have a look at what that looks like versus the 4:3. So we'll be looking at a bit of a ratio comparison as well towards the end of the DVR. Anyway, let's stop chitter-chatting here on the desk, and I'm going to jump to having a look at some DVR. Rightio, here we are on board with some DVR, and this is from a little Romeo 4-inch frame that I got flying around. And it's probably worth noting too, I really want to talk about what this camera was like as an FPV pilot. Now, I'm going to leave some links down below too to some other videos where people break it down and go through the settings, I guess, and the internal components, like I know Bruce from RC Model Reviews and some of those other people. But what my focus is what is this camera going to be like when you get out and you get flying with it, and how does the Eagle perform for a pilot? Alright, so we're flying around here, and the first thing I want to say is, look at those colors. Look how beautiful and bright those oranges are. I guess the reds and the contrast to them to the greens, they look really, really good. So I love the warmth of this camera, and I think it looks fantastic as far as color saturation goes in the image. A very, very nice, bright, vibrant image. Now, the second thing that's really worth mentioning that is a fantastic plus for here, look at all the, I guess, the dark parts and the light parts when we're flying around here. You know, going under those trees, or I think I look up at the sky in a little bit, that nothing is washed out or too dark. So it doesn't really matter what is happening. Everything in the screen definitely feels like it is still, I guess, still visible and not getting washed out or too dark. So that's something that I really, really like about this camera. So whatever sort of secret sauce they've got under the hood, or whatever algorithm that they're running, they do a fantastic job at making sure that the contrast and the wide dynamic range is fantastic. So the bright skies and and no matter how dark the ground is, you're going to be able to see everything, which is great. And that was like a big thing I was worried about with this camera, because being a CMOS camera in the past, they haven't handled that very well. But it's great to see that the Runcam Eagle does a fantastic job at that. But then that brings us to our third point, and to me there was just something about this camera that felt off. Like this, I know YouTube is probably going to mess this up a little bit, but hopefully you can see. I think I'm just waiting for that person to sort of walk away and getting the all clear that I can fly around. But everything looks like it's digital or really, really jagged. And I know how ridiculous that sounds because it's an analog camera, but this is the best way that I can describe it. So it felt like I had all these little pixels out of place, and it really felt like I was watching a digital image. Everything felt jaggedy, and instead of nice straight lines that I'm used to seeing with my HS 1177, I felt like I had all these random, strange colored pixels or sort of things popping in and out of places all the time. And it was really off-putting, and it wasn't just me as well. I got my mate Perry. There's a good example of the sky not sort of washing everything out. I got my mate Perry to fly it around as well, and it was okay when you're sort of around the grass, but when you're coming up around gates or trees or anything where there was a very hard straight line, I found it very, very difficult to concentrate on my flying, because you just had this very strange effect when you're flying around. So that was a major issue. Hey guys, sorry about this one. This was actually meant to be the 16:9 DVR, and you can see I did have two separate recorders running, my standard 4:3 Dominators and also my Sky Zone screen. Both of these, like one is meant to be a 4:3, one's a 16:9, but for some reason both of these files ended up saving in a 4:3 ratio. So we're just going to have a look at the 16:9 camera by one of them, so it's going to be a little bit hard to do a side-by-side comparison. But nevertheless, we'll still be able to have a look at this. This is the 16:9 DVR from the Eagle, even though it's sort of saved in a still a standard 4:3. But this is definitely the 16:9, because this is the one that's in my GB190 kit, and you can tell that because it's got the little red rotor OSD in the bottom. So I definitely know that this is the DVR from the 16:9. I have no idea why it's saved in this sort of format. But there's still a few things we can actually talk about. Now some things that are the same, again, like the colors felt really vibrant and really fine, and that was the same with the wide dynamic range. That performed just as well in the 4x3 camera or the 16x9. But there were sort of two distinct differences. So as well feeling like you had a little bit of bigger of a field of view in the 16x9. It wasn't massively noticeable, I guess, like I was expecting it to be. I was expecting it to offer so much more image, and I don't know if that was just because I was on the Dominator V3s, that image was sort of stretched out anyway a little bit in front of me and I was used to it. But it didn't really feel like that much of a massive difference. But there was something that was very notable, and that was it felt laggy, or it just felt even more off, I guess, than the 4x3. And maybe that's because I'm not used to it or something else was going on. But all I switched out from this little flight here, I was usually flying around with the HS1177. I whacked in the 16x9 Eagle camera, and it was almost like I felt like I couldn't fly very well. The controls seemed really delayed, and like the copter felt really, really sluggish. And what I actually think is going on is that there might be a little bit of latency. And look, I'm not an expert in this, but this is just my personal experience when I was flying around. But it almost felt like there was a little bit of latency when I was actually flying the quad around because of, I guess, maybe that extra image or something that was that was getting sent back. So it felt very, very strange indeed. Now this one also I felt like suffered a little bit from that sort of jaggy or digital looking image, but it wasn't nearly as bad as what it was like on the 4x3. So maybe there were some different settings in play on the 16x9 camera, I guess default out of the box. But I felt like this one handled the jagged lines a little bit better, and it wasn't nearly as noticeable anyway, because that 4x3 was really, really off-putting. Now just a bit of a comparison, what I've done here, so this should help no matter how bad YouTube mucks up these files, we should still be able to see a difference. But the one on the left is running the Runcam Swift, which is a fantastic camera, and I really, really like it. And the one on the right is rocking the Eagle, the 4x3 Eagle. And this should really make it apparent, hopefully you can see what I'm talking about anyway, is just how strange some of those images looks in the Eagle, like how digital it looks and how you can't see too much, and how the one on the left looks, I guess, a lot clearer, especially those hard straight lines, so the trees or flags or fence poles or things like that. So hopefully this is going to help you guys sort of make that decision and understand what I'm talking about, no matter how bad the sort of encoding is on YouTube. So with all that said and done, you can probably guess how I'm feeling about the Eagle. Now I know a ton of people like Bruce and Joshua, they were loving this, and I've heard a lot of good things about it, and I was kind of wondering what was going on. Maybe, look, I have a funny setting or something like that. But for me, if I was given the choice of like picking out an FPV camera, this probably wouldn't be the one for me. I just found the look, it's cool to try a 16x9, but that felt a little bit laggy. But that's not the major issue. The major issue for me was it really had that off-putting sort of digital jaggedy feel that just, it was not helping me fly at all. It was very, very distracting. And so yeah, I guess the Runcam Eagle is not the one for me. So if you're looking for a new FPV camera, just be wary of that thing and realize, like, if this footage on the right doesn't bother you, then maybe it'll be fine for you. But for someone like me who's flown a ton of quads in the past and a ton of different FPV cameras, I actually did find the Runcam Eagle was a little bit harder to fly, a little bit more distracting, and sort of took away from the flying experience a little bit. Which is a bit of a shame, because I know they're doing some really cool stuff in there with that technology and the wide dynamic range, and it's great to see a CMOS camera sort of making its way back. But yeah, this time for me, I think I'll be sticking with my Runcam Swift for a little bit longer. So there it is, there's my review of Runcam's FPV camera, the Eagle. And to be honest, I know a lot of people loving this, and this might be a little bit unpopular, but it just wasn't the camera for me, because whatever is going on to make it have that sort of digital or strange looking effect, I found really disorientating when I was flying. And look, it did handle the light pretty well and all those sorts of things, but just for me, I don't think that I'm going to be jumping over anytime soon unless they can fix that, because it was very distracting. Anyway, but hopefully that helps some of you guys out there, and you can have a look at the different comparisons and the 16x9 and the 4x3 and all those sorts of things. But subscribe for more FPV related content. I'm going to leave some more of this DVR footage on the end of this. But and as always, happy flying!